So yeah, Saturday morning cartoon style. If everybody woke up and watched an hour of, like, say you have the full 14 hours of Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, if for those 14 days straight, the first thing that people saw in the morning was an hour talk between two spiritually renowned leaders about
Basically,
joy.
really happy, joyful people.
Yeah, really happy, joyful people to start their day, who are talking about like just the most basics of life. Like these two characters came from, as they say in the little documentary thingy, one came from absolute poverty, the other one came from like a palace and, given everything he needed, etc. And they had completely different lifestyles. The same kind of like piles of goodness and suffering and whatever else, like just things. And then they come together and they have a chat, and they're both so odd, like the strangest characters. And just seeing them chat, and you just see that for an hour every day for 14 days straight. Like the entire...
Yeah, and I want to say what you said, the fundamentals of life, like, there's a thing the Dalai Lama says in the talk, which is, like 100 years on this planet, you should not make more problems on this planet. And like that kind of basic, so fundamental.
Yeah, everybody knows again. Everybody's heard it.
Broad perspective, or just like the statement of the way to see, like, yeah, I should not make more problems in the 100 or so years I live on this planet.
Just to hear that every morning.
Yeah.
Or once of the 14 days, because there's just a bunch of other random versions of just that.
It'd just be like way better than reading anything in the newspaper. Or
watching anything on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like just the makeup of culture, of a family, of anybody who does that, particularly when they're not exposed to that stuff already. Because like people who are exposed to it and already live down that, it's more like little reminders and stuff, which are always handy, and they would immediately apply it, but at the same time they apply anything to life. So if like somebody's already on that level where they are applying that stuff to life, they can learn equally from all things and just apply it to life immediately and carry on. But most people are not applying things directly to life, and the things that they're basking themselves in and bathing in are not things that can even
help them to learn how to...
Yeah, like they're not even giving themselves contextual opportunities to make that flip. So it makes it a lot more difficult, given this world is already not exactly helping cultivate awareness and balance and so on. So giving people an opportunity to think, even for a moment, that happiness is a mental skill that I can't actually develop in myself. Like just having that opportunity once a morning for 2 weeks is probably more leaning that way than anything else that person might do that year. And that alone would just make that a Saturday morning cartoon or a Netflix and chill type of a thing.
Yeah.
Just bam.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, again, it's just a contextual thing that gives people the inclination to possibly think that they can live differently, which it's just by seeing, like, it's because this conversation between these characters is not like a speech directed at about like how to live well or like going to self-help or anything like that. It's just seeing them interact and how to be.
You see them just as they are, making jokes and being...
And you just have a bunch of different variations of that. Like, just one is Krishnamurti having breakfast or something. And then the person watches that and then they go have breakfast. And like, however they act during their normal breakfasts, after seeing Krishnamurti or Dalai Lama or whoever have breakfast and the way they are at breakfast, and then the person goes to have their breakfast, you cannot escape the fact that the way you are at breakfast is different from that.
Yeah.
And that there's like that huge paradigm clash there, which is like, what have I been doing every breakfast? Like, it's inescapable at that point. But people have to, one, get the clarity to have that kind of insight at all. But that will more likely come if they give themselves opportunities. And right now, there's no Saturday morning cartoon that I'm aware of.
And I mean, it's. I was thinking about the. There's a Studio Ghibli documentary with Hayao Miyazaki, and he was filmed for like way more recording than you actually see in the documentary again. And it'd be like, oh, I just want to see it all. And you get to see him in grumpy moods and this and that, and all these different like moments in time of just his daily life and what he's doing, you know. And you know, if you're into like animation and stuff, it's inspiring, and it gives you an insight into like who is the actual person, you know, creating and how do they think and all this stuff. And I was gonna say, like, just if you're gonna learn anything, that's why people do things like you have apprenticeships, or you have job, whatever they're called, where you know go to the actual place when you're not actually like working there, but you get an engagement with how it works, whatever. Yeah,
internship. Yeah.
So those that is like the same thing into industry kind of manner, is see how what's actually happening in a daily life. You don't just get to talk about it. You get into it, right?
Something I was just writing about today is the difference of like mastery of craftsmanship and applying it to life, because nobody thinks of it's getting the kind of same thing where it's very rare to hear somebody talk about life being a skill or something like that. Just the mental skill in general is still not a topic, let alone life skill. And to understand the mastery of craft, or how to do a thing like animation or whatever it is, to apply that to life is really hard if you don't know what it looks like. And most people in their daily life don't know what it looks like. So even if they do want to apply and they have the inclination to apply, all of the stuff that they do here, like all of the stuff that by the age of 15 you've already heard everything you need to know to be the greatest person on the planet, then it's like, yeah, I want to apply it all. How do I do that? And it's really hard without an example. It's the same way of like, somebody breaks a world record, and in the next like year, everybody else breaks the world record too. And it's like, why was it even in a world record? It's because nobody understood what it was like to beat it, or didn't think it was possible. Like the whole belief and understanding and clarity and all this other stuff, the stuff that actually materializes reality, the mental state of people, that is the thing that has to kind of peek over the ledge to another side. And then suddenly it's like, oh, and it just clicks, and then people can just do it. And if we have enough of that, which with things like the internet, it is becoming more prominent, and just the world is kind of like on another level now of understanding things like, mental health is like a topic over the last 30 years, even though it's really just health, but it's, has to have that distinction and framework right now, and it's kind of a new thing. But eventually it'll be like spiritual health, or just health overall, which includes everything, kind of like how, just the way we mess up phrases like diet or whatever, it's just, or science or anything, it's just kind of like there's all these distinctions and stuff, and then eventually it worked its way back until it's just like one broad overview thing, and you just understand it, like all the subdivisions as a whole.
I was listening to an art demo, and he was talking about, as a student, whatever it's good to like, or he was just talking about himself and his experience of dividing his study into like, okay, head, and then figure, and then drapery, and then draped figure, and then landscape, and still life. But then it's like, well, really it's all art. It's all under the umbrella art, but it, can help maybe to divide those things, and to be like, okay, I'm studying this, and then you realize, well, actually when I draw the figure, well, I'm drawing the head, and I'm doing this, and all kind of blends together. And then I was doing, then I looked at some notes I had taken from doing Feldenkrais, and the teacher said, it's all one lesson. We're saying it's the tongue, or we're doing the neck, or we're doing the arms, or whatever, and we have to do it for like editorial purposes, because to kind of just categorize it and make it like make sense, so it's not just one giant thing. But really, it's all one lesson. And I mean, life is like that. But
Like, all
I
those-
think I was going to say something else there. But
Yeah. All of those distinctions and stuff, therefore conventions exist for a reason. They're helpful. Like, we need these things for formality's sake, to be like, this is my eyeball and this is my nose, this is my body. Like, you know, they're both part of the same thing, and then my body is just like an accessory or an apparatus that I'm using, but then but my body is also part of me.
Yeah, you say,
like,
my body, but then it is me, and, you know, then just...
And my toenail is my body, but it's like that specific part of my body.
Mental health, health,
yeah,
whatever.
Physics, chemistry, biology, how everything works. Yeah, it's all the same, and it's kind of that, you know, the craftsmanship of life is there's all these, you know, basic rules to it of like, do several things that keep your body and mind and whatever healthy so that you can function. Do several things so that you have the, you know, some catalysts that are bringing up opportunities for you to grow, whether it's like you want to master an art, or you want to build a family, or you want to whatever, like you have your array and spread of things to go into. Like, you get all that, and those are conventions, and you can divide it up and be like, that and that and that and that, those are all my things that I've decided and I've chosen out of the infinite stuff that I could do. And then your craftsmanship is there are no longer like boundaries or rules between any of these things, cutting them up, and it's like, it's all about just how you live, is understanding what kind of effect you're going for with a moment, which ultimately, eventually, if they're all like subdivisions of happiness. It's like, I want to be happy. They're all like subdivisions of it. It's like, I want to be happy. This is my spread of contextual stuff, and I have these like mental and spiritual tools, or these other things, and you're just like, okay, I understand the effect of all this stuff, and now I can go and try to be happy. In the same way that it's like, I want to draw a picture. It's like, I can study drapery, I can study heads, I can study this. I want to write a book. It's like, I understand how to do an opening sentence, I understand how to do a plot structure. Like, you have all these things, but the craftsmanship means if I want my opening chapter to be spooky, I know kind of loosely what to do there and what kind of effect I'm going for, and I can use all the tools to kind of make that happen. Or I want this picture to be really like happy and inspiring. I know what kind of palette might work, or whatever. Like, I know in this situation, I want to be happy and encourage some people. I roughly know how I can go about that. There's no hard and fast rules about anything. There's no boundary between one and another. It's just, you have a general understanding of how these tools work, what kind of effect you're going for, and how you can kind of make those meet to end up where you intend to go. Yeah, craftsmanship is like a weird, broad tool, but the craftsmanship of life, it's interesting. And that's the stuff that you'll learn from watching people live. You can listen to all the speeches you want.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Yeah. Surprise. I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
So surprise turns into normal. It's tied to that.
Yeah. Surprise turns into normal equals silently everything is a celebration.
Yeah.
And then the other one is you'd be surprised turns into until you're there, then it's just the way things are. Enlightenment / people's perception. Exception is if you're already highly developed, then you can see it. Oh, and people's perception of their own potential. So
that's a big pile. Yeah,
so the bottom part I don't maybe get, but the top part here is, like I've noticed, just a simple example is times in my life happen many times where like I'm trying to do something at some point, and then at some point I realize, hey, I'm just doing that thing easily now that I once had difficulty attempting to do. You know, and it's just you realize
Craftsmanship.
at the time it was like it was taking effort or so there's some just it just wasn't happening, and now it's happening, and it's like, wow, that just happened. So
That's basically a perfect example of everything we've talked to in the last half hour.
so you'd be surprised, but then you're there, and you're not surprised, and there's just like
And you can't imagine not being there. Just as you couldn't have imagined being where you are now
before.
when you were in that other spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How to live.
What is this huge pile?
Yeah. Perception of their potential.
So,
But if you're highly developed, then you can kind of see how things are gonna happen anyway. In a sense.
What you were referring to is more the highly developed version of things.
Okay.
What usually is the case is that somebody, you can look at this at the very simple everyday level of if somebody is like nervous about something or worried about something, about like I guess for young people it would be like a test is coming up for school and I'm nervous about it or whatever, or I'm stressed about this.
I mean, it could be
anything coming up, like anything that you're stressed about or worried about or whatever, thinking to the future. And then in 2 years from now, you will not remember that, but since then you have stressed about so many things that have also passed, and now the future has come and gone hundreds and thousands of times, and now you are where you are. If in a moment you're still stressing about something in the future, you just missed your lesson thousands of times.
Yeah.
And that is usually what happens. Is like, if you looked at your future and went, oh, that thing that I'm stressing about right now, it works out fine. Or it works out somehow, and then in the future I'm stressing about something else, you'd be surprised at like your future self of like, yeah, it worked out fine. Like, why am I stressing about it? If you could see your future, you wouldn't have a worry. And not because of, because I know how everything's going to turn out, but why would I stress now? Because there's just no reason to, ever. It's just silly. So you'd be surprised at like how everything works out. Like, you can count on your fingers the number of times that things have not actually worked out decently. Whether it's like, something in a week or something years from now or whatever it is, you can literally count on your fingers the number of things that have stuck with you for 5 or more years, 2 or more years, that are genuinely things that you regret or whatever it is. But even those, though, like anything that you might regret from the past or whatever, it has benefited you because anytime you've reflected on or whatever, it's like something to bounce off of for you to learn and grow from or not, or for you to see if you have grown or not, etc. So literally anything that happens is perfectly fine. And to see that, it's like...
Everything is okay cannot be understated.
Cannot be overstated.
But
yeah, like if you were to... If something happens and then you end up somewhere else, it would always be a surprise to the person. Like if a person is stressing out, and be like, well, you'll be surprised when this works out fine, and then another thing does, and another thing does, and another thing does, and you stress about every single one of them, and then at the end you're okay, and there's something else you're stressing about. You'd be surprised. You can't tell somebody that because they're stressed out about it. They have no idea.
They wouldn't actually be surprised when they show up there.
Yeah, because as soon as they're there, then it's no longer a surprise.
Yeah, they'd be stressing about the next thing or whatever if they keep doing that.
And that's basically the perpetual cycle and the usual version of it. The more highly developed version is you look into your past and go, wow, I was at a spot and now I'm where I am. And yeah, that's, the development happened. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Neat. That's like you're now looking at the process itself, so you can sit there and be like, oh, future thing that I'm stressed or worried about. And the inclination is there, not in this like framework and words of, I will not be surprised by that because I know that it's probably going to turn out differently than whatever I'm worried about. And it'll play out, and then I'll end up somewhere, and everything will be fine. Like, that is effectively the state that you're in constantly. So there's never any worry or anything, because it's like, future is just gonna happen, and I'll end up there. Ta-da.
Yeah, I mean, it just becomes more futile and silly, and like you catch yourself like, why am I projecting into the future with this concern that's entirely fictional? And then you just like we said before, you naturally stop doing the things that are difficult to do because they just add difficulty to your life.
Or you no longer see them as difficulty, and then they're no longer difficult because the difficult part was you seeing them as difficult.
Well, exactly.
Many different reasons.
Yeah, life becomes easier.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, what are my little tools? I can like slowly make this moment happier, just over and over. But yeah, it does have to start with catching oneself, and then ultimately it turns into. Well, it first starts with catching oneself worrying about the future and being like, what? Why am I worried about that? And then catching oneself and having enough tools or skill or whatever to be like, can I not do this?
Yeah.
And then catching oneself when it happens, being like, I'm going to not. And then trying multiple times in so many different ways with all that repertoire and like array of skills and context that you've developed to be like, okay, I'm going to not do that.
Yeah.
Figure out that. And then it eventually ends up in like this teeter-totter, 50-50. Half the time you're worried and half the time you're catching yourself. And then eventually it's like you're barely ever doing it, but it happens once in a while, and you're catching yourself. And then eventually you're just never doing it at all. And there's no such thing as catching yourself, because anytime it's like, oh, that happened. Cool. There's like a moment there where I was like worried.
That's this point here, I guess, right? Everything is a celebration.
Yeah.
So you come to the point where surprise is normal, and it's not surprise, and you're just able to be, and you're content, and you know that things change in all kinds of ways, and you just kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, like the it's almost like the things that mind boggle people in that way of, oh, it was so wonderful when this happened, or something like that kind of elation that comes from good things happening that surprise a person that this kind of good thing can happen to them, or that can happen at all, or whatever it is.
Right, like expecting it, or surprised that the good thing happened.
Yeah, like synchronicities or things lining up, or
yeah.
I got a big break, or anything like that. Like those are variations of being mind boggled by life and how it actually functions. Like it's just like, you know, by how it actually functions. Why are words so hard? How life is doing its thing, and you can be there to catch it. Like all that stuff just keeps happening all the time, and when you start catching on to the fact that life is functioning that way, like that's the way it functions, then those kind of, they trip people up. Like they go mind boggled, like literally mind blowing. In the sense of like, oh, this thing worked out, I'm so glad. Like, why? What? Like, have you taken a breath? Were you not celebrating that breath, like the moment you breathed, because that breath worked? Like every single time you inhale or exhale, you could be celebrating those too, because it's like, oh, I'm so glad that worked and I didn't choke on that one. I didn't choke on that one either. Like, just to, hey, the light still turned on, or hey, the door, I was able to open the door really easy, or like, oh, hey, that person's turning left on the road and I can turn left too. Instead, it's like you go on like billions of people are driving, billions of vehicles, like these giant, huge motorized things every single day, and most of them are getting to where they need to without issue. Like the vast majority, like in the immeasurable quantities of people who get to the places they need and things that work versus not, it's like not even comparable. And even the things that are not, like, end up working in some way anyway, every single time. And it's just,
if something doesn't work, then like all the focus goes on to that, and it just becomes.
And it's not that it doesn't work either. It's like it's stuff that works.
It's exactly what's meant to be.
Yeah, like and meant to be in that like
Yeah.
that
Operation.
within the context of our conversation, the functionality of the universe.
Yeah.
Like it, I think I can't remember if we mentioned it before, but like the whole, like, when something goes wrong, it's like somebody turns into your lane. Like the fact that road rage is a thing is like one of those blatantly obvious, like, oh, life presenting itself to people. Like if somebody turns into a lane in front of somebody, or like cuts you off when you're walking, or closes a door, or drops something in your way, or like you're just walking and there's something in your way that somebody put there, whatever it is, it's like it happened to be there. The person happened to move that way. The thing happened to go in that realm of possibility and pick that path, and that's what happened. That's it. That's literally it. But then things going wrong, you label it, that person cut me off, or this thing was in my way, or whatever it is. Nothing went wrong, and the person thinks it went wrong and have made themselves miserable. That also is not wrong. That is just life operating in the most obvious way. It could not be more obvious than send a person into complete like fluttery agitation and misery. It cannot be more obvious to the person about what the person is like and what the person is going through and has within themselves than that. Life could not be more obvious.
Back to that, yeah.
And nothing has gone wrong at any step and any phase of this.
Yeah.
And yet that'll be a thing that somebody focuses on throughout the day. And it says, people suck, they get in my way, or they put things in places, oh man, people are dumb, whatever it is. And it's like, do you realize that nothing actually happened? And the only thing that happened is life is reflecting upon you what you think and what your issues are. Like, it's that simple. It's so simple. Nothing has happened that is wrong at all. Like, no matter how violent somebody is or stupid somebody is, or like anything out there, it is just life operating in the most obvious way it can, and it's just doing its thing. Just doing its thing. And it's weird to look at when not developed enough. In the same way of like, things are surprising. Oh, this thing happened. And it mind boggles people that way. Of like they can't believe that this happened, or believe that this happened, not like it's like surprised that it happened. Like, oh no, this is happening. That type of mentality is stuck in that paradigm of there's like, oh, this person cut me off and that's wrong and they're terrible and whatever, and not looking at oneself and not seeing how life is operating. That is an exact parallel to this one person is angry at another person, or this one person did something bad to another person, hurt them, whatever it is. Anything like it is exactly the same. It is life functioning based on the intensity and ignorance and attachment and all this other stuff taking place. It cannot be anything else. And that's not like some kind of weird metaphysical esoteric-y something. Like you don't have to look at the actual energy and like physics of it. It's just that on a pragmatic, in the practical order of things, everything's gonna keep going exactly as it goes, as it's meant to go. Like, if you just look at the world now as internet, what do you expect to come from internet? Naturally, we're gonna have a huge phase where nobody knows how to use the internet. It's still in its infancy, and the whole internet it has to get flooded with like all of the possible things, and the framework and networks have to get so bloated with material and accommodate the explosion of material that people can put on the internet until something like Google happens, so that it's all in some pile and it's just like a cesspool of all the stuff that people could possibly put on the internet. And you're going to have the upsurges of all the things that people are generally ignorant of their attachments to kind of rise to the surface. So that'll be like the main thing it's for a while, whether it's cat pictures or rants or whatever else. Like that kind of pile has to come before anything else can happen with the internet, if it's going to be used as a platform for information at all.